October 24th, 2021, a 15-year-old son called the police to report that his sibling had been deceased for a year and his body was in the room next to his. When the police arrived at the apartment on the 3500 block of Greencrest Drive, near the West Park Tollway in Houston, Texas, they found 8-year-old Kendrick Lee's skeletal remains. He had been covered with a blue blanket. Kendrick's 3 abandoned brothers had been living alone for months and were thin, malnourished, and hungry when the authorities found them. The detective Gonzalez said, "The apartment was in a horrible condition. We saw soiled carpet, no furniture at all, no bedding, no blankets that we could see. We saw roaches and flies, and a very bad condition for anyone to live in." The children's mother, Gloria Williams, and her boyfriend, Brian Coulter, was then arrested a few days later. They were located in a library while reading online articles about the discovery. At a press conference announcing the charges in 2021, Lieutenant Dennis Wilford described Brian as manipulative, but said Gloria still bore responsibility for her son's death. Gloria relinquished parental rights over her children after her arrest. The 2 younger siblings have since been adopted, while the eldest is with a foster family. She was receiving $2,000 a month for 3 of her kids who are disabled, including Kendrick. But Gloria continued receiving money for the 8-year-old, even after he lost his life. 2 siblings testified during Brian's trial that they saw him repeatedly beating Kendrick. One sibling explained that Brian had beaten Kendrick over an incident involving water. Brian became angry when Kendrick drank what Brian saw as more than his share of water. After the boy lost his life in late 2020, Brian then covered the body. And a few months later, he and their mother then moved to a different apartment, 25 miles away, while the boy's 3 siblings were forced to stay behind. In April 2024, 34-year-old Brian Coulter was sentenced to life in prison without parole for beating the boy to his end. In October 2024, 38-year-old Gloria Williams pleaded guilty to 2 charges of injury to a child. On November 12th, she was sentenced to 50 years in prison. As part of Gloria's plea agreement, she requested that the children not have to testify again about the slaying. She will have to serve at least half her sentence before she will be eligible for parole. Prosecutor Edward A. Applebaum said, "By pleading guilty and waiving the right to a jury trial, the defendant finally acted like a protective mother. For one day of her children's lives, she was a good mother." Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg said, "We expect parents to protect their children, not hurt them, because children really are our most vulnerable victims. This case shocks the conscience not just because a child lost his life, but because of his parents' complete and total disregard for human life." On April 5th, 2023, the police responded to a brush fire in Robinson, Texas. They then found a woman's body, initially unrecognizable, burning in a field next to a white dog that barked frantically at officers and refused to leave the area of the body, but also refused to allow police to capture it. The next day, the dog was still at the location after the body had been removed, when a citizen notified Animal Control, who tracked the dog's owner through a chip on him. The police were then tipped off that the corpse likely belonged to Mandy Reynolds, and the dog's name is Titan. This information led police to Mandy's residence, where they found all her belongings missing and her home completely empty. The police found her belongings in an abandoned truck several miles from her home. Her car was also missing, prompting the police to run her vehicle information on a license plate database. They determined that the car was in Wichita, Kansas. Wichita police, upon being notified about the vehicle, spotted Mandy's car 3 days later on April 8th. The police attempted to pull it over, causing a high-speed chase to ensue. The chase lasted 30 minutes and consisted of the Honda going over 100 miles per hour. The missing Honda ultimately crashed into another car. A man got out of the Honda and fled the scene on foot and hid on a shelf in a grocery store where he was caught. The man encountered was 29-year-old Derek Denson, who is the cousin of Mandy. The investigators discovered a handgun inside the car, which matched the shell casing found inside the container where the police say Mandy's body was burned. The gun in the vehicle was determined to be Mandy's grandmother's weapon. Walmart security footage obtained by the police in San Marcos, Texas, showed Derek buying a plastic storage container, identical to the one Mandy was later found in, a shovel and a gas can the day before her body was found. The footage also captured Titan, with his head sticking out Mandy's car window. The medical examiner determined that Mandy lost her life from a gunshot wound to the head. On November 7th, 2024, Derek Denson was sentenced to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 30 years. Jason P. Darling, an attorney for Derek, said, "Derek is obviously disappointed in the verdict and sentence. While we appreciate the jury's work and effort in this case, Derek intends to appeal the verdict and has already filed his notice of appeal." During the punishment phase of his hearing, the jury learned he had 9 previous felony convictions since he was 15. This includes violent offenses, including shooting someone in Kansas as a juvenile. He was on felony probation with a warrant out for his arrest at the time of the slaying. After the verdict, members on both sides of the family started arguing in the courtroom. Derek's brother-in-law tried to hit someone and was taken out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He was later released. Prosecutor Ryan Calvert said, "All of these people on both sides are all members of the same family, so there's a lot of bitterness and anger and hurt between those people." In a GoFundMe set up after Mandy's slaying, her mother, Carlene Hardy, said that Mandy had moved from Idaho to San Marcos and was thinking about starting college before her life was ended. Derek reached out to Mandy, her mother says, under false pretenses. This resulted in Mandy traveling to Kansas to bring Derek to Texas for a brief visit. Further details surrounding the circumstances of the slaying, such as motive, were not revealed. The family is rejoicing after the sentencing. They say they owe the justice to Titan, the dog who also attended the trial.